it is essential and necessary that you are familiar with our emergency evacuation procedures. Should it become necessary to evacuate the hotel, a continuous siren will sound, followed by an audible instruction to evacuate the building. When you hear, "May I have your attention please," over the public announcement system, you should proceed to the exit closest to you and make your way to the muster point, proceeding east along the waterfront towards the western end of the Family Chalet, better known as the Breakfast Shed. In the event of an earthquake, do not run out of the building. Stay calm, drop, cover, and hold on. If evacuation is required, please listen for instructions by the hotel's PA system for the earthquake evacuation route and muster point. Associates from Hyatt will assist you with evacuating. Once outside, conduct a head count for your group to ensure that everyone is accounted for. Should you believe someone is missing, notify the Hyatt associate in your area. Do not return to the building for any reason until the fire service has stated it is safe to do so. Thank you. Be safe and have an enjoyable time with us.
Thank you. The Honorable Colum Imbere, Minister of Finance, Senator the Honorable Kazim Hossain, Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, the Honorable Stephen McClatchy, Minister of Labour, Senator the Honorable Paula Gopi-Skoon, Minister of Trade and Industry, the Honorable Brian Manning, Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Ian Narine, Chairman of the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, Dr. Dorian Noel, Deputy Governor, Monetary and Operations and Policy, Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, Ms. Eva Mitchell, Chief Executive Officer of Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, distinguished guests, members of the media, members of the viewing and listening public, good morning. My name is Ken Simmons, very honored and grateful to be given the opportunity to be Master of Ceremony today and moderator. And just to give you an idea of what we are in for today, as I welcome you to the SME marketplace. Now, the government has recognized the significant contribution for the small and medium enterprises in their contribution to economic growth and employment in the country. Hence the reason today we're going to be highlighting and unveiling some measures to improve the SME sector. So we're going to be hearing much more about that today, of course, all of the distinguished speakers. And I want to invite those who are viewing on TTT and those of you that are viewing on our Facebook page and our YouTube page, the Ministry of Finance, for you to send your questions. And later on, we're going to be having an open forum for you to send your questions, and we're going to direct the questions for those who you want to direct it to, and we're going to seek to answer those questions as we move forward. As we proceed, let me introduce our first speaker for today. Dr. Dorian M. Noel is currently the Deputy Governor, Monetary and Policy of the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, and a Governor of the Board of Governors of the Heritage and Stabilization Fund of Trinidad and Tobago. Dr. Noel is a former Commonwealth Scholar to the ICMA Center, the Business School of Financial Markets at Henley Business School, University of Reading, where he obtained his PhD in finance. He is also a former Commonwealth Academic Fellow to the Systemic Risk Center, London School of Economics and Political Science. Dr. Noel holds a Chartered Alternative Investment Analyst professional designation from the CAIA Association. In recognition of his outstanding contributions to the advancement of the Institute of Banking and Finance of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Noel was conferred with the title of Fellow of the Institute of Banking and Finance of Trinidad and Tobago in 2014. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Dorian M. Noel.
The Honorable Minister, Mr. Colin Imbert, Minister of Finance, the Honorable Stephen McClatchy, Minister of Labour, Senator the Honorable Paula Gopi-Schoon, Minister of Trade and Industry, Mr. Ian Narain, Chairman of the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, Ms. Eva Mitchell, Chief Executive Officer of the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, distinguished guests, members of the media, good morning. I have the wonderful opportunity to starting off this morning discussions and saying some important remarks on the launch of some important initiative this morning. But I think it's also important for me to start off by giving the appropriate context why what we are doing, why we are here today, and what we are about to discuss and launch with respect to the SME sector in Trinidad and Tobago, that we need to understand why this sector is very important. Globally, SME accounts for roughly 60% of employment and between 50 to 60% of value added, and are the main driver of productivity. Therefore, many governments and development agencies have targeted strengthening the business capacity and performance of SMEs and startups in order to increase productivity and job creation, reduce social inequalities and poverty, and build a more resilient and sustainable growth. Trinidad and Tobago is no exception to the norm. I'm going to give some highlights of the SME sector and ecosystem in Trinidad and Tobago to give a better context with respect to our domestic environment. Total registered business in Trinidad and Tobago, according to the CSO Survey of Business Establishment Register in 2018, that was done in 2018, total registered businesses, that's over 26,000. Total number of SMEs, employing less than 250 persons, roughly about 17,000 or 65% of registered businesses in Trinidad and Tobago. SMEs, employing less than 25 persons, roughly about 16,000 or 60% of the registered businesses, and less than 5 employees, roughly 12,000 or 44% of registered businesses. So SMEs in Trinidad and Tobago play a very important role in our domestic economy. I would like to, in terms of GDP contribution, and this is Central Bank conservative estimate, that's to give roughly 30%, SME contribute about roughly 30% to GDP, and employ over 200,000 persons. With respect to the SME sectors, what are the key performance factors? Now I'm going to stay away from the debate on whether these factors exist in Trinidad and are appropriately calibrated for SME growth and development. And we're going to leave that debate for another day. But I'm just going to point out some important performance factors. Institutional and regulatory framework. That is a fair, transparent, and most importantly, a framework that allocates economic resources efficiently. 2, market conditions. Stable and consistency with respect to markets and institutions. Also stable input, prices, capital, labor, and goods and services. 3, a business environment, supportive, collaborative. Good network of business support services. And I think business chamber, active and supportive business chamber, business accelerator and incubator programs, and innovation hubs are very important in developing and enabling business environment for SMEs. Very importantly, access to finance, a good mix of financing options that are durable, affordable, and appropriate for the different development stage of SMEs and startup. I think the CEO of the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, Ms. Eva Mitchell, will talk to us about this morning about the the stock exchange SME market for equity financing as an alternative, cheaper form of financing for SMEs. And 5, access to skills and knowledge. The SME mentorship program will address this gap in the SME market. We're going to talk a bit about the SME mentorship program. And again, Ms. Mitchell will expand on the importance of the program to SMEs. And finally, access to innovation, data analytics, and technology for digital transformation. Let me just give my personal observation with respect to the SME sector in Trinidad and Tobago. SME in Trinidad and Tobago have low levels of technology adoption and innovation, which became quite evident during the COVID-19 pandemic. This problem needs urgent attention and can be addressed by, perhaps, the provisioning of grants or tax incentive for digital transitioning of business models and processes. And I think the fiscal budget of 2022 have some elements of grants for firms adopting digital transformation. And hopefully the minister can expand on this in his remarks. The second observation, SMEs also have low levels of internationalization and participation in the global value chain. This poor SME performance indicator can be adequately addressed by provisioning of suitable funding for market research and access, negotiating SME market access into trade policy, and incorporating net spend on SMEs in private and public sector procurement. I am sure the Ministry of Trade and Industry has these policy solutions in focus. Where does this venture bank fit in all of this with respect to the SME ecosystem? The bank has always provided, and will continue to provide, stable market conditions for firms. Our monetary and financial stability activities are carefully calibrated to, 1, ensure stable input prices of goods and services, and 2, maintain the stability and continuity of financial markets and institutions to provide credit to firms. We have also created important financial systems entities. In 1981, the Trinidad we created we play a very important role in the creation of the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. And from 1981 to 1996, the bank provided most of the resources, key staff, and financing for the full operation of the stock exchange. Last week, the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange celebrated its 40th anniversary and 40 years of success. The bank is pleased that the exchange has grown to become an important strategic partner of the bank. The partnership has been strengthened by our collaboration with the Ministry of Finance on the SME mentorship program and the stock exchange SME market for equities. In 1983, we also play an important role in the creation of Trinidad and Tobago Unit Trust Corporation. This entity was created to mobilize household savings in order to support the financing of economic growth and development. Today, the Unit Trust has joined forces with the Ministry of with the Ministry of Trade and Industry on a scale-up program for SMEs, utilizing its vast wealth management knowledge and expertise to provide business advisory services to SMEs in order to boost their growth and economic development. And around 1993, we also play an important role in the creation of the First Citizen Bank, which plays an important role in the SME ecosystem in providing credit and administering the government COVID-19 relief program for SMEs. Capital market development continues to be a strategic priority of the bank. Alongside monetary and financial stability, with respect to SMEs, the bank fully understands the importance of the sector to sustainable growth and employment creation. These recognition Well, those recognition has led the bank to partner with the Ministry of Finance and the Stock Exchange on the initiative where, and we are going to, which we're going to discuss today, we're going to launch today, as well as partner with the Inter-American Development Bank, the IDB, in 2022 on a project to map and better understand the SME sector, which we hope will help lead to the development of an appropriate SME strategy and policy for Trinidad and Tobago. What are we including to the ecosystem today? One, we are expanding the access to financing for SME with the launch or relaunching of the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange SME market, which will provide more durable and cheaper financing for SME, especially if the tax incentive for listing on the market is appropriately factored into the financial decisions of firms, a form of financing that is better suited for the long-term growth and development of SMEs. Two, we are expanding the business development service available to SMEs with the SME mentorship program. Existing support focus on business advice, consultancy, coaching, and management training. Some entities that provide these is NETCO, St. Augustine Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, Scale Up, a partnership between the Unitrust Corporation and the Ministry of Trade and Industry. Very importantly, the ODC in 2002 note that firms that decide to avail themselves of business advice tend to perform better than the average both before and after the intervention. And that important findings in the OECD countries really highlight the importance of this mentorship program that we are about to launch today. In addition, policies for business advice improve firms' output and productivities. These results highlight the importance of the SME mentorship program and other business development services. I seriously hope that experienced entrepreneurs, captains of industry, business bodies, and business development experts agree to become mentor to SMEs and startups. And finally, the SME marketplace. We have taken a role in organizing an electronic platform which lists the business development services and financial support available to SMEs and startups. The marketplace brings all services available to SMEs in a single place, an e-portal that is available 24/7. The SME marketplace gives visibility to listing service providers and facilitating connection to them for SMEs. Further, the marketplace also reduces information costs for SMEs, giving them free and readily available access to information to support growth and business performance. I will conclude with the following remarks. I think, and this is my personal view, I think a comprehensive SME policy or strategy is needed. One, provide the best opportunity for sustainable growth. Two, more explicit in the targeting of future growth areas. Three, target and promote innovative business rather than target and promote innovative business rather than replicative ideas. And four, treat adequately with gender, recognizing that women, especially single women, are increasingly becoming the head of household and the main breadwinner. I applaud the ministry, I applaud the U.S. Embassy and the Trinidad and Tobago Entrepreneurship Hub on the launch of the Academy for Women Entrepreneurs program in 2021. It somewhat addresses the gender gap in the SME ecosystem. But a lot more has to be done. I thank you for your attention, and good morning.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dorian Noel, the Deputy Governor, Monetary Policy of the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, and the Governor of the Board of Governors of the Heritage and Stabilization Fund of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, just to let you know, today's SME Marketplace is brought to you courtesy the Ministry of Finance, the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, and the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. Now, behind me you would see a website, sme.finance.gov.tt, and we encourage, for those of you that are in the auditorium and for those of you that are viewing, to check it out to see much more information that we're going to be revealing here today. As we get ready for our next speaker, Ms. Eva Mitchell is currently the Chief Executive Officer of the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange Limited and its wholly owned subsidiary, the Trinidad and Tobago Central Depository Limited. Ms. Mitchell joined the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange Limited in 2016 as Manager, Market Operations, with the responsibility of overseeing the daily market operations of the exchange. She has over 19 years' experience in various areas of financial services, such as finance, asset management, retail and commercial banking, and brokerage services. She holds a bachelor's with honors in business management from the University of New Brunswick and a master's in international finance from the Arthur Lugjack Global School of Business. In October of 2020, Ms. Mitchell assumed the position of acting CEO of the TTSE with overall responsibility for business development and operations of the company and its wholly owned subsidiary, the TTCD. In April of 2021, Ms. Mitchell was appointed Chief Executive Officer of both companies. Ladies and gentlemen, please let us welcome Ms. Eva Mitchell.
Good morning, everyone. The Honorable Minister, Mr. Com Imbert, Minister of Finance, Senator, the Honorable Paula Gopiskun, Minister of Trade and Industry, Mr. Ian Narain, Chairman, Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, Dr. Dorian Noel, Deputy Governor, Monetary Operations and Policy, Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, other distinguished guests, members of the media. The Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange is delighted to be here today to be part of the SME Mentorship Program launch and to have partnered with the Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago on this initiative. As we continue to celebrate a major milestone of 40 years, the TTSE recognizes that locally, regionally, and internationally, there is need for growth and development of our region through our capital markets. A stock market is instrumental and integral to economic development and financial growth. In Trinidad and Tobago, the population is getting older. Indeed, much of the Caribbean is in the same boat. The issue of persons getting invested in order to save for their retirement or to have funds available to them tomorrow is critical to everyone at a personal level. The opportunity and ultimately the next step for our capital market is to move from providing platforms to developing market activity on the platforms that we provide. This requires us to engage more with stakeholders, both existing and potential stakeholders. In the 2011 to 2012 national budget, the Minister of Finance announced plans by the government to provide small and medium enterprises with an avenue for raising funds on the local stock market in order to reduce their reliance on bank financing and provide them with an alternative source of capital to expand their business. This initiative is also intended to further develop the local capital market, which is important towards our thrust for economic diversification. It's no secret that a lot of these small businesses have a real challenge in terms of accessing capital for a number of reasons. There is a lack of collateral, there's a lack of knowledge and know-how in terms of producing a proper strategic plan and even cash flow projections. In response to this initiative, the TTSC established a market for SMEs in 2012 with the specific objective of providing a successful avenue for small and medium-sized companies to raise capital and to fulfill the considerate potential that so many of our companies have. So I'm happy to say, through listing on our SME market, companies can benefit from the following: raising equity financing or patient capital via public offering, tax incentives with 0% tax for the first 5 years from listing on the TTSC, and a 50% reduction on tax for the next 5 years, reduced listing fees payable to the TTSC, increased brand visibility and transparency of their business. It also helps in attracting a broader investment base locally, regionally, and internationally. It allows employees to benefit from holding shares in the company and also allows shareholders a viable exit option and opportunity to use shares as collateral against debt. As part of our SME market development, the SME mentorship program was designed to connect the companies with a suitable mentor who can comfortably cover the key governance themes necessary to position a company to list on the stock exchange. This is not us reinventing the wheel. Such structures exist regionally and internationally. In fact, according to research done in the European market, approximately 71% of SMEs acknowledge the importance of a mentor. The main goal of the program is to strengthen those companies within the SME sector to have a more transparent operation and operate as a publicly traded company. Geared to improve investor confidence in a listed company, the SME mentorship program demonstrates the willingness of the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, along with the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago and the Ministry of Finance, to invest the time and resources necessary to assist companies to operate in an efficient way on the stock market. Once an SME is considered to be eligible to list on the SME market, the company is required to have an independent mentor up to 5 years subsequent to listing. After this stage, the SME company has the option of appointing an internal director or senior officer of the company to perform the functions and the responsibility of the mentor. The SME company is expected to commit time and resources to work with the mentor who would be providing guidance to the company. All mentors must be approved by the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange before their appointment can become effective with an SME company. The requirement for the TTSC's approval is to evaluate the mentor's ability and capacity to guide the company in relation to compliance matters where the exchange has oversight. The SME company can propose a mentor or may select from a list of pre-approved mentors that will be available by the TTSC. Persons or entities wishing to become a mentor or select a mentor can visit the Ministry's SME portal for further details and information on the SME market and mentorship program, as well as on the Stock Exchange's website. I wish to acknowledge the collaboration of the Ministry of Finance, the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, and the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, and I am delighted that we are all here today to launch this initiative. My hope is that this is the beginning of much more and greater collaborative efforts. There is no more fitting context in which to continue our celebrations of our 40th anniversary than the one we have today, and one of many more to come, characterized by optimism for our prospects, a commitment to integrity, and the drive to move our local economy forward. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Ms. Eva Mitchell, Chief Executive Officer of the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange and the Trinidad and Tobago Central Depository Limited. Let me just remind you at the end, nearing the end of our discourse, we're going to have a Q&A. So we invite all of the listening and, of course, the viewing public at our Ministry of Finance Facebook and YouTube page. And for those of you that are viewing on TTT, to direct your questions to the Ministry of Finance Facebook page. So after our remarks and discourse, you have your say. If you need any further clarity, you can direct any one of your questions to any one of the members of the panel, and we'll do our very best to answer those questions. It's now time to introduce our featured speaker for this morning's event. Colum Imbert is a qualified civil engineer and registered engineer with 2 degrees in engineering and 2 postgraduate degrees in law. Professionally, Mr. Imbert is a member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators and the Energy Institute and registered with the Board of Engineering on Trinidad and Tobago. After leaving UE in 1991 to pursue a career in politics, he expanded his knowledge base from engineering into law and taxation. In 2007, he attained a Master's of Laws degree in Construction Law and Arbitration with distinction. And in 2016, he attained his 3rd master's degree, this time in oil and gas law, again with distinction, with a specialization in fiscal regimes and oil taxation. Both of his specialized law degrees are from the Aberdeen Business School in Scotland. In 2020, he commenced a 3-year course of study at the University of London, which, when completed, will give him his 4th master's degree in finance with a specialization in economic policy. He's currently completing this master's in finance via distance learning. Apart from being one of the most prolific debaters in the Parliament, having contributed to hundreds of debates, he has served as an elected PNM Member of Parliament for over 30 continuous years and as a cabinet minister in 6 PNM government for an aggregate cabinet experience of over 18 years. On August 10, 2020, Mr. Colum Imbert was re-elected for the 9th time to the House of Representatives as the minister and member for Diego Martin North East in the 12th Republican Parliament. Minister Imbert was first appointed as Minister of Finance in 2015, and upon his re-election to serve as MP for a 9th time in 2020, he was asked to once again manage the very weighty fiscal affairs of the country. Mr. Imbert has also acted as Prime Minister in the absence of the substantive Prime Minister during his 7-year tenure as MP and Minister of Finance. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to our Honourable Minister, Minister Colum Imbert.
Thank you very much. I will make sure you get the short version of my CV on the next occasion. My cabinet colleagues, the Minister of Trade and Industry, Senator the Honourable Paula Gopi-Skoon, and the Minister of Labour, the Honourable Stephen McClatchy. Thank you for coming. I would also like to welcome the Deputy Governor, Monetary Operations and Policy, Central Bank, who you heard, Dr. Noel, the Chief Executive Officer of the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, Ms. Mitchell, and the Chairman of the Stock Exchange, Mr. Ian Narain, as well as our various guests from various chambers of commerce and other business organizations. Thank you very much for coming. This SME mentorship program and SMB marketplace will be administered by the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. You'll have heard Ms. Mitchell give you some insight. This intervention is timely, as just last week, the Stock Exchange commemorated its 40th anniversary. And it would be remiss of me not to highlight some of the key developments of our stock exchange. Some of these include the second-tier market, introduced in 1992. In 1994, the stock exchange entered into an agreement with the exchanges of Jamaica, Barbados, and the Dominican Republic for the harmonization of the regional capital markets. In 2003, the establishment of the Trinidad and Tobago Central Depository. In 2008, the largest ever transaction so far on the stock exchange and in the English-speaking Caribbean, the Royal Bank, or RBTT, share transfer, which was valued at US $2.2 billion. 2018, the market witnessed the largest ever initial public offering with a corporate bond offering of $4 billion from the National Investment Fund holding company, NIF, which was oversubscribed by almost 100%, demonstrating confidence in our local securities market. The government continues to recognize the important role of the stock exchange and the important role that the exchange plays in its contribution to small and medium enterprises. We recognize that this sector has inherent challenges. You'll have heard the previous speakers talk about that, primarily in the area of acquiring financing due to a lack of proper and up-to-date documentation, poor debt repayment records, non-adherence to statutory obligations, and an inability to meet corporate government standards. These factors lead to higher financing rates and a natural adverse impact on the profitability of the business. Some SMEs are unable to access any financing at all, and thus unable to grow and develop their businesses. In addition to limited access to finance, SMEs face numerous challenges, such as regulatory hurdles, HR and IR issues, and workforce gaps. Further, commercial banks are generally conservative, and accordingly, an alternative source of financing to loan financing is equity funding, which is what we are all about today, through public offerings or share issues on our stock market. According to a World Bank survey in 2011, access to finance presented the fourth largest obstacle faced by SMEs, with 14% of them indicating this as a major constraint, and 28% of them identifying access to finance as an issue. Further, 65% of SMEs, two-thirds, reported that investments are largely financed internally, and that is no different in Trinidad and Tobago. However, although in the initial stages of entrepreneurship, businesses usually rely on internal funds, eventually, in order to grow, small business expansion must be funded from external sources, primarily banks and other lending institutions. In 2012, the government announced its intention to work with our stock exchange to create a third tier on the exchange to provide SMEs with access to the capital market. However, since that initiative, only 2 companies have been listed, which are Cinema One, listed in November 2018 at a price of $10, and Endeavor Holdings, subsequently listed in December 2019 at a price of $12.50. And I do see representatives from both these entities here. Thank you for coming. But the market response was underwhelming. The market capitalization of these 2 companies in September 22 was approximately $270 million, which represents less than 0.2% of the overall market cap of the stock exchange. Similar to the Jamaica Stock Exchange, eligibility to list on the TTSE SME market depends on several conditions, with approval at the discretion of the stock exchange. The company must be incorporated with limited liability in Trinidad and Tobago or any other CARICOM nation. In making a decision to approve an SME for listing, the stock exchange considers the nature of the business, its financial performance, regulatory history, past government activities, and historical records. You'll have heard about the current incentives to list on the SME market, which we approved and established in January of 2022 as part of the Ministry of Finance's thrust to assist SMEs to grow and expand. It's worth repeating, these incentives include a full tax holiday for the first 5 years, and thus exemption from corporation tax, business levy, green fund, and a 50% reduction in taxes for the second 5-year period. Now, the global pandemic, COVID-19, affected SMEs significantly. And the government, recognizing this impact on SMEs, developed a comprehensive suite of incentives to support and stabilize the sector. This is because we understand the role SMEs play in employment, economic activity, and liquidity. Included in this support were the tax incentives previously mentioned. These incentives were broad, supporting not just traditional businesses, but digitally created online companies, as we were mindful that we had to adapt to the times to stabilize the economy and build resiliency. Accordingly, we established the first phase 300 million SME loan guarantee facility in March 2020 to assist SMEs in the wake of the global pandemic. And phase 2 of the loan guarantee program was refined in 2021 at the request of the SME sector, who experienced difficulty in accessing loans under phase 1. And the reasons, obvious. Because of the pandemic and for other reasons, lack of discipline primarily, SMEs struggled to provide documentation such as management accounts, up-to-date audited financial statements, compliance with various other obligations, national insurance, etc. They struggled. So we gave them in local parlance what is called a BLI. We allowed SMEs to access the first guarantee loan program, well, phase 1 and phase 2, without having to be up to date for the most recent year. And we gave them a period of time to comply. Over the years, SMEs have been sustaining livelihoods, especially among women, youth, and groups in vulnerable situations. And we are focused on lowering and eliminating the barriers faced by these enterprises. There's a range of ways in which the government has provided support to SMEs, by way of training, incentives, and funding, especially at the micro level. The National Entrepreneurial Development Company, NEDCO, for example, provides training programs that range from starting and registering a business to financing and expanding it. And there are workshops dedicated to training small and micro entrepreneurs in improving their entrepreneurial skills every month. Recently, NEDCO conducted workshops on transforming businesses in a new digital environment and holds regular business advisory group sessions. NEDCO provides support for every step of the entrepreneurial journey every month. Micro-enterprise owners can access these programs free of charge as a sort of informal business school to retool themselves. NEDCO also provides grants to micro-enterprises. So you see, to become a small business owner, you must first have become a micro business owner, unless you have extraordinary access to capital. So as a government, we are providing assistance at all levels, especially the base level. Small businesses grow into medium-sized businesses, which is what the Junior Stock Exchange is essentially designed for. So coupled with this focus on training and resource development are a range of tax exemptions and tax incentives for farmers, agro-processors, and manufacturers. New businesses can enjoy tax holidays and waivers on equipment depending on the sector. Providers of digital and technical services have a 50% tax exemption. Small business owners, maxi drivers, have access to a CNG loan for conversion in a new fuel-efficient environment. And these are just initiatives from the last 2 years. In fact, if I listed all the initiatives from the last 7 years, we'd be here all morning. And I will urge my colleagues, let's start publicizing this, because there's so much going on that people are not aware of. Now, I spoke about the COVID-19 guaranteed loan facility, and I recognized that this facility was designed specifically to deal with the unforeseen economic impact of a global pandemic. So we decided to move to a permanent guaranteed loan facility. In partnership with commercial banks, we are introducing a new long-term guaranteed loan facility. We're providing collateral funding in the amount of $500 million to back up a new long-term loan guarantee scheme for small and medium enterprises. First Citizens Bank will manage this project in collaboration with other commercial banks. The government loan guarantees will be for up to 80% of the value of the loans for a term of up to 10 years, inclusive of a 2-year moratorium on repayments, and will focus on the non-energy sector. To ensure that SMEs have skin in the game and thus an interest in repaying these guaranteed loans, SMEs will be required to put up 20% of the required security. We are targeting the end of November 2022, end of next month, for the launch and operationalization of this new loan facility. Other support to small and medium enterprises will be provided by the Ministry of Trade and Industry, which has several facilities such as the Gateway to Trade program, which is spearheaded by that ministry in collaboration with the Trinidad and Tobago Coalition of Services Industries, targeting 4 service sectors: business and professional services, information and communication technology, energy services, and tourism. The Export Booster Initiative, which is in collaboration with the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association, with the aim of enhancing market access for small and medium enterprises, and the Grant Fund Facility to be administered by Export TT. So I now come to the core of what we're about today, and that is the mentorship program. It is noteworthy that Jamaica has been very successful with its junior stock exchange, where we have just 2 companies on the SME tier of our market, both of which have struggled in recent times. Jamaica has 46 active companies listed on the junior market. So we decided to see what was different in Jamaica and what we could incorporate here. The key difference was the presence of mentors. In Jamaica, by strategically developing their competencies and acting as a compliance advisor, mentors directly contribute to a company's growth, innovation, and overall strategy, thus improving customer and investor confidence in the company. These mentors, which are obviously well-established companies, are expected to act with due skill and care and be responsible for advising the board of the junior market company on the establishment of adequate procedures, systems, and controls in order to comply with good standards of corporate governance, such as the holding of regular board meetings. I'm sure you won't be surprised how few small businesses hold regular board meetings. The establishment of appropriate committees of the board, including an audit committee, and even large companies are not always compliant where that is concerned. The carrying out of appropriate due diligence before it enters into any material transaction. Good fiscal discipline, such as the keeping of proper accounts and records. Good human resource and industrial relations practices, and compliance with statutory obligations. Complementary to the tax incentives and to ease the operational burden of listing, the government, in collaboration with the central bank and the stock exchange, has thus designed a similar mentorship program that would provide the necessary support to the SMEs and close the gaps of insufficient documentation, as well as ensure adherence to compliance and corporate governance standards. Proposed SME mentorship rules were thus published by the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange in June 22 and approved by the Securities and Exchange Commission in August 22. As the CEO has said, this SME mentorship program demonstrates the willingness of the stock exchange to work with the government to invest the time and resources necessary to assist companies to operate efficiently on our stock market. With the operationalization of the SME mentorship program, the government aims to integrate the other support services provided to SMEs by government agencies in an effort to promote a stable and accessible environment for the growth of SMEs. To this end, a single entry portal, the SME Marketplace, was developed on the Ministry of Finance website, which will provide access to information on the SME market and procedures for listing on the stock exchange. The SME mentorship program, inclusive of the criteria required to become a mentor and the application process, as well as provide access to other support services provided by government agencies. The portal will also provide 24/7 online access, connecting SMEs with business support products and services currently offered by various public and private sector entities. Aside from the 24-hour access, the portal will provide public and private entities with the opportunity to engage new SME clients. The overall objective is to create an environment via various programs to grow and expand our small and medium enterprise sector by increasing access to traditional and new export markets, enhancing the capacity and competitiveness of firms in the non-energy manufacturing sector, attracting investors through the creation of new economic spaces and development of a modern regulatory framework, and continuing to facilitate improvements in the ease of doing business in Trinidad and Tobago. And finally, promoting a dedicated digital transformation regarding e-commerce to increase the participation of micro, small and medium enterprises and female entrepreneurs in particular in the economy. This entire suite of programs, which is geared towards the SME sector, is expected to strengthen its governance structure, sharpen its competitiveness, and contribute to the expansion of the non-energy sector. I firmly believe that a strong focus on these strategic objectives will aid in more engagement, compliance, and operational effectiveness and efficiency for the overall benefit of the economy of Trinidad and Tobago and all of us. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister of Finance, Colum Imber. So we've heard some good news for those in the small and medium enterprises sector. Some good news indeed. We've heard contributions from Dr. Dorian Noel, Ms. Eva Mitchell, and of course, just of recent, the Honorable Minister of Finance, Colum Imber. So as promised, it's now time for you to field your questions to any one of the members of the panel here today. We invite the members of the media. You can ask your questions for those of you that are seated in the auditorium. And for those of you that are viewing and listening on our Facebook page on YouTube, the Ministry of Finance, okay? Make sure to post your questions, direct your questions to the Ministry of Finance Facebook page. And once we get to it, we're going to make sure to direct the question to who you want it directed to, okay? So at this time, we invite members of the media, those that are seated here and those who are viewing, to ask your questions to any one of the members of the panel. All right, so we have one question coming in. How exactly do the tax incentives work? When do they become applicable to the business? I don't know if anyone can...
That's simple. Are you all hearing me through this microphone? Yes? As soon as you meet the requirements and you list on the Junior Stock Exchange SME tier, that's it. Tax incentives become immediately applicable.
Okay. So it has to do, not new, just, so those of who are existing SME, for those in small and medium, is not just for new people who are coming into that particular sector?
Existing and new.
Okay, great. Excellent. All right, so any other questions? Yes. Yes, can you come to the microphone, please? Thank you. Wait, one second. Can you make sure that the microphone is on? Thank you.
That's a good question.
All right, we're hearing you now. Go ahead. It's on.
Eva, how you become, what is the framework or the structure to become a mentor under the framework program?
Sure. So mentors that are interested in being approved as a...
Can we have Ms. Eva's Mitchell microphone turned on and up? Thank you.
Hold on.
It's not on. I am on.
All right, so we're sorting that out. All right, so it should be good now? Yes?
Hello?
In the absence, do we have a cordless mic very quickly to?
Should I stand there?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Go to the podium.
All right, so there is an application process. Should I turn this off?
It's working.
There is an application process. In order for you to qualify for that process, a pre-screening will be done, and the pre-screening will be based on a fit and proper assessment that's done at the stock exchange. Once you qualify for that fit and proper, your application then goes and it's scored into different categories, right? There is an internal committee that's set up to score your application based on certain criteria and certain categories. Once it meets that management approval process, once it is approved by the internal committee, it then goes to the board, and the board will give its final approval. All right, but you have to qualify in the same way that you have to qualify for a fit and proper with the SEC or let's say with the central bank. There is a fit and proper assessment that is done to ensure that the mentor is suitable for advising the company, not just from a business perspective, but also from a governance perspective. So, yeah.
Yes. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Any other questions? All right, so we got one. How do I know if my business qualifies as a small or medium business?
So in order to list in the SME market, the business must have an issue shared cap between 5 to 50 million. So in terms of size, you must measure 5 to 50 million in terms of issue share cap. Once you meet that criteria, and you're also able to present us with your documents in terms of registration, you are able to list on the stock exchange.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Yes. Yes, sir. Can you identify yourself? And
yes, Ryan Hamilton Davis, Trinidad Newsday. Thank you very much, very much. I just want to marry with Mr. Ramesh's question, especially considering that fit and proper process. What is exactly the criteria to fit and proper? How do you connect the SME to their mentor? That's one question. And second, I'm really glad the minister mentioned that there was only 2 SMEs in the stock exchange. My second question would be, how come? Especially if an opportunity like this is presenting itself, I would believe that there would be SMEs trying to beat down the door. So are these matters connected to their ability to maintain with compliance? Financing issues. What kept the SME sector from the stock exchange?
Okay, I'll handle those 2 questions. And thank you very much, Ryan, for coming to our functions and asking multiple questions, as you always do. The first one is a little complicated. There are rules that have been published with respect to what constitutes fit and proper. I prefer you take a look at that rather than us go into detail on that. The reason why SMEs are not on the exchange is we are launching the mentorship program today. You see, we looked around the world in the regular meetings that I have with the central bank. One of the issues that I kept looking at was access to credit and the increase in the provision of credit by the commercial banking sector to businesses. And I noticed that it was fairly static. So we looked and we thought, well, what can we do? And I mean, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure out that small businesses, their biggest problem, or one of the biggest problems, is financing. And they can't get financing for a number of reasons. I've already elaborated it. So we looked around the world and we saw the Jamaica stock market with 46 small businesses actively trading. And we thought, well, what's the difference? I've said this in my speech, and the reason is the mentorship. And you need an established, successful, disciplined company to teach the small enterprise that's coming on how to develop into a disciplined, larger company. So the mentor will, some of the things I said there, they may seem obvious. Holding of regular board meetings, having an audit committee, a compensation committee, following proper human resource and industrial relations practices, doing proper due diligence before you make an investment decision. A lot of small businesses operate from day to day. They're marginal businesses. So the reason why, what we found in Jamaica is when one of these successful established companies takes a small business, a fledgling small business under its wing and coaches it and teaches it, that's when you get a vibrant sector. So far we've had 2 companies and that's it. It's not easy because when you go onto the stock market, you have to expose your business to everybody. There are shareholders meetings. You have to answer questions. If you're a private company, that's your personal and private business. But once you list on the stock exchange, you now have to open up yourself to the entire shareholder base. So that's the reason. Okay?
All right, that answers your question? Okay. You have another one? True to form?
Well, Ryan, you want to give some other people a chance? Oh, okay. Oh, you gave him the questions. I should have known that.
No.
It's okay, don't worry.
No, there was, in Dr. Noel's presentation, he brought up some information from 2018, which is, pre-pandemic, all of that are issues and stuff like that. And there has been some questions being raised, especially where data gathering is concerned. In the SME sector, does the stock exchange and the ministry, are they satisfied with the level of data that there is on the SME sector to make certain decisions, especially where there are gaps in technology, compliance, those kinds of issues?
Which is a good question. We always have a problem with
Music is a piece of art that goes into the ears and straight to the heart. Music is also considered the international language that crosses all barriers and unites all cultures. The Cross Caribbean Countdown is a popular fan-driven music countdown show that features the hottest lineup of Caribbean stars and music.